Presocratics now. We're going to kind of have an overview of history of philosophy up into Aristotle, beginning with Thales. So, if I ask you, who is the first Western philosopher as discussed in class? The answer is Thales. Okay, I want to emphasize that because I don't know how that gets. I've seen semester after semester people not getting that one, and I don't know why. And I'm not going to say who, because I think that messed some folks up when I said who. I see people putting the answer for another philosopher. I'm not going to say it this time because I wonder if that's what tripped them up when I say, don't put this answer. It's Thales. He is the first known of Western philosopher. Okay, I mean, as far as history of philosophy in the Western world goes, this is our guy. All right, born in Miletus. And what we're going to see is that whole Aegean area, Greece, that part of the world is the seedbed of Western philosophy. It all is relevant to that part of the world. Just all of these philosophers. He was from what's modern Turkey area. His interests were natural philosophy, math, and astronomy. He wrote, quote, on nature, was his, what we would call book or his writing. Okay? He used physics to measure the Egyptian pyramids. That's something you'll need to know. He's the guy that measured the Egyptian pyramids using physics. He predicted a solar eclipse that came to pass in 585, before Common Era. BCE stands for before Common Era, if you're not familiar with that term yet. Before Christ is the more traditional term that was used that eventually has been replaced with the before Common Era. He was in search of the arche. Now this becomes a theme that we're going to see all throughout, pretty much throughout most of them. Some of them don't really emphasize it, but we'll get to that later. But that first principle, again, metaphysics. Remember, we're looking for what's the stuff of the universe. And now really what branch of study has that become? Talking about what's everything made out of? Biology. Well, science, right? In general. Yeah, okay, biology, dealing with life, but you're dealing with the realm of science, okay? And what you're going to see with the early philosophers is they were, you've got math, you've got philosophy, you've got astronomy. Oftentimes they had multiple interests. And so philosophy was just a part of it. Now it's its own discipline, its own field of study, and then you have it separated from science. You have it separated from, here's astronomy, and like I said, biology, and you have it all broken down into these smaller branches. But before there was these distinctions, it was oftentimes lumped together. You've got great philosophers that were mathematicians. Okay, we see these combinations. All right, and we're going to see somebody here in a little bit that is well known in the world of geometry. Okay, predicted. Okay, we got that. He was in search of the first principle, the arche. That arche, where we get our word architect, Greek term, meaning beginning, first, this kind of thing. Okay, in the beginning. All right. His conclusion is that all is water, the world rests on water, and has a soul or spirit. Okay, that's what he comes up with. Now, I call these the cavemen of philosophy. All right. Some of the stuff is going to seem a little silly to you because we've progressed. We've got, well over 2,000 years, about 2,500 years between us and him. All right, that's a lot of time. A lot of things have happened. A lot of things have happened that we've learned in the last century. In fact, the last 50 and 60 years, we've learned a whole lot of things. Right? So we have knowledge that we just take for granted every day. I mean, they didn't have a cell phone they could pick up and call grandma with. All right. So you got to put them in their context that these were brilliant thinkers in their time, and they just were starting out to, formally question and document things and talk about, philosophical concepts that perhaps many of these things had been verbally discussed, but they weren't recorded, weren't written down. Okay, so there's things that could have been talked about for centuries that we just don't know because nobody wrote it down. All right. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. I know you got that in your notes. And next, yes.
Which one was a student of his?
Anaximander was, it's right here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hang on to that. But yeah, you need to know that. Who was possibly a student. Possibly a student.
Right there first.
Okay, Thales.
Sorry.
Right. You're okay. Yeah. Anaximander was possibly a student of Thales. That's, once again, with documentation as ancient as this is and as fragmentary as it is, there's only so much that we know about these guys. Most of the stuff that we have are fragments, and you don't have any original writings and things like that. It's a lot of stuff that's been handed down. He had interest in geometry. Once again, you're seeing that combo here: astronomy, philosophy. Okay, he's got a broad interest, and he is the first person to write philosophy in prose. The Greeks were really big on their poets. If you don't know anything about ancient Greeks, poets were almost like prophets to them. They were very respected, and people sort of took to heart the poetic writings. They had a lot of respect for them. All right, but he writes in prose. He's just straightforward stuff. Okay, he invented the sundial. Again, one of those many interests. I had one in my yard. I think my aunt, it was actually hers. I think she finally took it with her. But, everybody knows what a sundial is, right? It's the way that, and they were able to tell time, the Greeks and the Romans. Okay. General, within so much accuracy with it, but pretty neat invention. Okay, he argues that all is boundless with no specific qualities, creating opposites. Now, some of these you just kind of got to try to grasp the concept of what they're talking about. Some of this is kind of something you have to struggle with and go, what were they really saying? It's divine because it's deathless and indestructible. Again, that kind of godlike term there, divine. They're not thinking, they're not Muslim, Jewish, Christian. They're not thinking in those terms. They think, Greek pantheon, or the Greek gods, Zeus, Apollos. That's the kind of thinking that they had. Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, right? Okay, so, but he's got this idea that everything it's divine because it is deathless and indestructible. So he's sort of pantheistic in his view, isn't he? We can kind of pick up on that the universe is just, it's just there, and it doesn't die. It's just always there. So they have kind of a pantheistic, it appears. The world is surrounded by concentric circles made up of the earth in the center. I don't think you can see all that, but you got it in your notes. Then water, okay, water around that. Then air, and then fire. All right, this was his idea of how the universe was made up. It's just the way he thought about it. All right, but all is boundless with no specific qualities. And if you think about that opposites kind of concept, maybe he was onto a little something there. In our universe, we do understand that there are always seem to be, these opposing forces, don't they? Things that are, there's a balance even in that. There's a balance. And yet, things get out of balance. But he's kind of, very pantheistic, I think,